Welcome. In front of me is a Samsung Galaxy Tab S9, and today I will show you a couple tweaks and tricks you can do on this tablet. So, to get started, I'm going to open up Settings, and I'm going to start off with the Display section. And here we have Light and Dark mode, which is visible actually throughout the setup process, so it's not as glamorous. But under that we have part of this which isn't visible throughout the setup, which is Dark Mode Settings, and here you can select it so it turns on a schedule either from sunset to sunrise or on a custom timer. So nice option to utilize, especially if you tend to use your device outdoors and indoors, so it will give you basically best of both worlds. Now, moving on a little bit further, we have motion smoothness, which is basically the screen refresh rate. By default it's set to adaptive, which will basically look way better. But if you want to minimize the battery usage with the screen on, you probably will want to select it to standard, which will give you a little bit of a better battery life, but only when you're using the device. In standby mode, when you're not using it at all, the battery consumption will be exactly the same. Going a little bit further down, we have screen mode, which is basically the saturation of colors on the display. I personally like the natural just because it tones down the colors a little bit more to a reasonable level, and Samsung does boost their saturation to an insane level. You can see right here. These colors are way, and I mean way too overdone, so that's why I prefer natural. Now if you feel the same way, that's probably the only option that you will go as well with. But obviously if you like the vivid mode, which is saturated, and you just prefer this kind of image quality, that's fine. That's completely up to you. Now moving on a little bit further, we have Edge panel right here. And this is basically this panel right here. You can probably barely see it. You can pull it out. Come on. There we go. So once you pull it out, you have access to a couple applications right here. These applications will alter depending on what applications you have most recently used. You can also view all of them right here. So all the ones that you have installed. And you can edit them, so you can add more to the panel. And that being said, I'm going to add a bunch of them just so you can kind of see one thing here. So once you start adding a bunch of applications, at one point it will then swap to this. As you can see, it then makes it a 2-column version, and after that it will start to be scrollable. So just to kind of prove this point, you can go back, and now as you can see, you can scroll it up and down. So that's not the only thing that you can do with this panel. So in the settings, which we are still in, you have panels. And here we have a couple to choose from. Now, I think if I were logged into a Samsung account, it will give me a Galaxy Store button right here, but I'm not, so it's not giving me that at all. And that button would allow you to go to the Galaxy Store and purchase more. And yes, I didn't misspoke, I meant purchase. So even though you paid for this tablet roughly like what, $900? Yeah, Samsung basically gives you a middle finger and tells you, yeah, more usable panels are 99 cents each. Now it's not expensive, 99 cents isn't necessarily like egregious price for such a thing, but it's insulting that after spending this kind of amount of money, you still need to purchase more to use the functions to a fuller extent that are in the device itself, in this operating system, the custom version of Android from Samsung. So that's kind of why I'm having a problem with it. Now, with that being said, there's a couple options right here that you might find useful. But I'll point out one which I personally tried to use and it just wasn't as great, which was the weather. I use this on my phone, and when enabled, you just kind of flip to it and it shows you the weather, obviously, right? Nothing groundbreaking happening yet. But when, at least from my personal experience, for instance, I add it right now, I want to check out the weather tomorrow when I wake up. If I leave my house, I open it up, it's not updated. It's still giving me the time or the weather from yesterday, which would have been like whenever I refreshed it last time. Then I do this to refresh it, and at that point we're already getting into the territory of why. And even right now, as you've seen, it was open and the weather just changed. Because apparently I needed to refresh it to give me the accurate weather, which obviously starts to defeat the purpose of this if every time you need to pull it out, swap to it, probably, refresh it. Then for me it was taking a little bit longer, too long to for just a general weather refresh, to the point that I was able to basically do this, find weather widget or application that I was using, open it up, and see the weather before this loaded. So I just want to point that out, because if you want to utilize some of these options, they might not be as good as they seem at the very first moment. Now, let's move on with the tweaks. So next thing that I'm gonna go is back to the display and to the navigation bar, and this just allows me to select gesture navigation, which I personally prefer. There we go. So it removes the buttons from here and gives me the bar, which can then swipe up to go home, swipe from either side to go back, and so on. The typical gesture navigation. Now additionally, we do have the gesture hints. So as you can see, we do have this bar right here. If I remove it, it did shift this a little bit lower. Now the bar right here still, or with the widgets taskbar, still gets in the way. So there's another thing that we can do to minimize that as well, to give us a better experience on our device. So I'm just gonna kind of like flick to the bottom, go to advanced features, multi-window, and then full screen and split screen view. And this I guess will only work with split screen applications, unless, let me just quickly check one more thing. Give me the keyboard and remove the Russian. That's odd. So no longer do we have a full screen, force full screen basically for all applications. Just gonna quickly check it in one more location, if I can actually find it. Yeah, I don't see it anymore. So previously we did have option to force applications to run in full screen, ignoring a couple things like, for instance, the taskbar or status bar, to give you a basically an entirely full screen option, but I guess it's not here, or I just can't find it. In any case, let's just continue on. So navigation bar, which was also accessible to us in the display. You can get rid of it if you want to, or not navigation, taskbar I meant. Though, obviously, it's part of this device, so you probably might want to use it. Now, that being said, if you're planning to use a third-party launcher, which probably a lot of people will, you can say bye-bye to your taskbar, even though it's baked into Android. I believe Android 12 by default. Samsung decided to do its FRE and make it only their launcher accessible. So the moment you start using other launcher for your home screen, that's the moment you lose the taskbar. Now the absolute insult of this is when you start using another launcher, download it, you can open it up, it will work, and the taskbar will still work. The moment you switch it to be your default, that's when this becomes grayed out and turned off, because Samsung decides that, nah, you will not use the device the way you want, you will use our shitty ass launcher because we told you to do so. Otherwise you lose functions. And I guess that's not the first time that Samsung has done this. Unlock bootloader and you lose cameras. And a bunch of applications come as a benefit of Samsung. So again, Samsung always tells you you will use the device the way we want you, or not at all, in a way, which yeah, it's easy to shit on them for garbage like that. Fun times. Anyway, moving on, let's move over to advanced features, which we already did navigate, but I want to touch upon it a little bit more. So here we have side button, aka power button, because side buttons would also include volume buttons, which aren't mentioned here. Great logic, Samsung. And the reason I'm touching upon it is because probably for the most part, majority of you will be using Google as their smart assistant. No one in their right mind uses Bixby because it's garbage. Therefore, we're gonna switch it to power off. Now, it would have been a good design if they decided to allow us to switch between Bixby, Google, or power off menu, but that would actually require to compromise and give the users an actual option. That's not what Samsung does, so therefore you only can turn it off, which I recommend doing, because screw Bixby. Next, going back to the advanced features, we have the multi-window, which I did navigate to enable this. This will come into view in a second, so I'm going to turn it off for the moment. But here we have a couple different options that will relate to primarily multi-window usage. So we have swipe for split screen, not a good option. As you can see, it tells you to do the 2 finger swipe like this. It's not very convenient, let's put it this way. So I don't recommend using that, especially that you can split screen in significantly easier way, like let's say doing this. As you can see, infinitely easier than trying to like do the 2 finger swipe. And also you can do this with the panel right here, the same way. So let's just grab some application. Again, split screen, pop up. Again, it gives me significantly better interface and usage than what that was. Then below that we have swipe for pop-up view. This is actually a nice option. Let's set the pen to the side. So when enabled, you can do this, and it allows you to basically open or minimize the window into this pop-up view, move it around, minimize it all together. There we go. Close it if you want to. Reopen it, and you can have multiple windows like this. So just to demonstrate this. There we go. So as you can see, I have now multiple windows open. I can open up more, but it would just be redundant. Then if I, for instance, minimize all of them, I can tap on it, and it will allow me to basically access each one of them. As you can see, and again, I can just minimize them back. Pretty nice options right here for multitasking on your device. So now, going back, we have another option which isn't as useful. Just get rid of this, which is the show multi-window menu in one window, which is this little thing right here. For some reason I have it enabled. It's turned off by default, and I don't recommend using it. It shows up when you're using only a single application in full screen, and it gives you just the options for it, like so. But because all these options here are really easily accessible with different ways, so close, swipe up, then what else we got? We got the pop-up view. Again, doing this, same thing, just significantly easier and doesn't get in the way. And split screen, which again, just whip out an application, drag it, boom, split screening. So this option seems a little bit useless. I have it turned off by default. And then the last option will be the full screen and split screen view. This is a good option. Now I'm going to first prep for this to show this, so show this off. So I'm going to open up a couple applications at the same time, which will also lead me to another option. So right now I have 3 different apps open at the same time. And as you can see, we have this bar, status bar at the top, and our taskbar at the bottom. It's obscuring some of our application view, we could utilize the screen into better extent. So let's toggle this on, and voila, we are now using the entirety of the display, giving us a bit better real estate for our application. And now moving on to the next option, when you click on this little divider right here, where you have these 3 dots, you have this little star icon. Press on it, and this will ask you where you want to add the app pair to: taskbar, home screen, or app edge panel. Edge panel, taskbar at the bottom, and home screen, obviously. So I'm going to do it both here and here. And now, let's just actually, before I do anything, I'm going to close it off. And our app pair is right at the bottom. Tap on it, automatically opens all 3 applications in the same setup that we had it when we saved it. And obviously you can also access this from here. So again, I'm going to close it. And voila. Nice option to have several different app pairs saved and get to them really quickly at just a single press of a button. So highly recommend utilizing this. Now the last thing that I'm going to show is the adapt sound option, and this will be only utilized with headphones or earbuds. So it won't work with the actual speakers of the device itself. You won't be able to at least utilize it nor set it up correctly. So let's get into the settings again and navigate to sound and vibration, and then scroll down to the sound quality and effects. Select allow, and then adapt sound, again allow. And here we have a couple different pre-made ones, so you can choose whichever one you would fall under in terms of the age group that it caters to. What it does is basically gives you a couple options, the general kind of like semi-decent options set for different age groups based on the hearing loss. So as far as you probably know, the older you get, the more hearing you will lose, and you tend to lose some specific kind of sound frequencies where they become not as audible to you. And this basically aims to give you those these sounds that you don't hear as well back. And you can choose whichever you want right here, but what I actually recommend doing, instead of choosing one of them, is selecting Test My Hearing. Now the reason I recommend this is because it will cater not only to your hearing loss, but also your equipment. So if you're using some kind of earbuds, it will technically consider those and try to boost the quality of those as well. So let me explain. The way this works when you're trying to set it up is when you put your earbuds, you will need to be in a very quiet environment, because the sounds that will be played are very quiet, and you will have a series of high and low pitch sounds from either left or right ear, and all you need to do is select if you can hear them. So obviously one part would be your hearing loss, if you can hear or not the sounds that are being played, and the second part will be the quality of your headphones or earbuds, whatever you're using. So if you have a cheap pair, probably low frequencies like bass frequencies are going to be a little bit harder for those earbuds to reproduce, and therefore when this kind of frequency is being played as a test for your hearing through this, you probably won't hear it, not because your hearing might be bad, but because the earbuds that you have are just a little bit of a poor quality for this kind of sound. And obviously, if you select that you can't hear it because you can't, then the device will boost this sound frequency to be louder, and therefore hopefully going a little bit over the threshold that the earbuds had. So you hopefully should be able to hear the bass a little bit better now, as a rough example. But in general, you should have a better sound quality when setting this up, and from there listening to music or anything else on this device, but only when using any kind of earbuds or earphones. This, like I mentioned, does not work with the built-in speakers. So anyway, With this being said, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.